Have you ever wondered what podcast producers actually recommend behind closed doors? The lead editor of my team, Emily, is joining me today for an incredible episode where we're diving into a few different things that your producer wants you to know, but may not always tell you. Let's get into today's episode. Hello. Welcome back to this week's episode of As It Relates to Podcasting. My name is Simona.
And I'm Emily.
And today we have a really fun episode for you. We're talking about all the things that your producer wants you to know but isn't telling you. And Emily and I came up with this topic. So if you haven't met Emily, she's been on the podcast before. Emily is the lead editor at Volt Productions, and she does pretty much all of our editing and manages all of our schedule, manages pretty much every single client from that capacity, which is like, she's just literally the best. You're the best at it.
Oh,
you're the best at it.
Oh, thanks.
You know that song? You know that song from Schitt's Creek? You're simply the best. Better than... Okay, all right, stop.
Welcome to As It Relates to Podcasting. Simona will now serenade me. Okay, great.
You know what? This is today's episode. Thanks for joining. No, I'm just kidding. In any case, we are super excited to be here with you today. And I will say, before we dive into our topic today, in the month of January, so if you're listening to this right now, it's December. In the month of January, we are going to host a workshop to dive into some of the specifics here. So keep an eye out on that, but you can actually access that by joining our membership. So the link to the membership is in the episode notes below. And if you want to go even deeper on some of the topics, that's the place to be. It's a really fun community. We have incredible members in there, and it's a really nice way to pull all different podcasters together. So with that, Emily, shall we dive in to today's episode?
Yes,
okay,
please.
Perfect. So we have a couple of different topics that we want to talk about, and we love doing podcast episodes together. I mean, I love it. I don't know if you love it, but I love it.
I do.
I know, me too. And we always get into these conversations, and I think that there's a lot to learn in here because you do all the editing in the agency. Also, I've been a producer since 2018, really. And we've learned a lot over the years over the things that work with different shows and things that maybe we should avoid. So where would you like to begin? Because we have a lot of stuff on our list. We have lighting, we have mics, we have retakes, we have AI, we have ad reads. Where would you like to start?
Start with retakes.
Ooh, I like it. Okay. Go. No.
And go. What I would say about this is everyone is going to have retakes. No matter who you are, you're going to have them. Like when you have filler words or you just lose your train of thought, it's totally okay. You're a human. You're allowed to do that. That's why we do editing. If you didn't have retakes, then what would I do? So, I'm partial to them. But if you want to make sure that you're getting your best point across in the best way and you say something and you flub it a little bit, let's say you think you slurred a little too much, so like you just weren't clear, something like that. There's a lot of different ways to do this, but one thing that we see a lot of times is that people will just try to re-say the thing right after it really quickly. Or they'll go from being really excited about what they're talking about to all of a sudden they're talking like this to do the retake to make sure that they're really clear. That drastic of a change in the editing process, sometimes I'll end up leaving in the worst take because that change is so drastic that it's very abrupt and it's jarring
It almost sounds worse.
Yeah, to the listener. It's very jarring. So I thought we would talk about this because Simona is one of the queens of retakes, I think, honestly, because
you wouldn't even know.
No, she has some of the literally I can clip things and it doesn't even look like I clipped anything. So Simona, that I wanted to give the background of why we wanted to talk about this. Will you share your wisdom on what you do?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Before I share some of what I do, I wanted to add to that because I was talking to my boyfriend the other day and he's been recording his new podcast and doing it with video for the very first time. And of course, if you're recording with audio, it's easy, right? It's easier to do retakes because you can really retake from as early on as you want to and you just kind of, re-record, re-say that part or what have you. When you're on video, it's totally a different thing because you have hand movements, you have facial gesture, there's so many other moving things. And also, one thing that people don't think about too is lighting. Your lighting changes, especially if you're in a room with natural lighting, your lighting will change as you're going through your podcast episode. And depending on where your hands are when you're talking, I talk with my hands all the time, depending on where your hands are can actually impact the movement of the light also. So it's like, that's like a little sidebar thing. But anyways, so him and I were talking about his new podcast. We were talking about how we were going to edit it and so on. And he was saying that he had 8 different files from Retakes. And I was like, what? I was like, how'd you get 8 different files? Yeah. He said that he stopped recording every single time he needed to do a retake. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's got to be other people out here who are probably doing that same thing. So I said to him, I'm like, you don't need to retake, like you don't have to stop the recording to do the retake. You can literally just pick right back up where you are. And that's one way to do it. What are your thoughts?
One thought is if you're sending that to an editor, that is a spaghetti video. And those are so hard because frequently what happens is when people stop the video, they end up moving a lot. They end up being like, okay, let me like redo this, blah, blah. You are now no longer the same size in the frame. You're no longer in the same spot. And so then it's like trying to match those. And unless you're very clear in how you label them, it's also trying to figure out where each one goes. And then it's like, okay, well, which one has the better take? Which one's this? Which one's that? Whereas like if you just do it in one file, it's all there in the order that you want it to be, unless you're at the very end, you're like, hey, I'm going to re-say this one thing if it needs to go in somewhere else, you know? 100%. I would prefer one file over a whole bunch of files any day if I had my choice.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. I mean, of course, there's like tech glitches and like you really can't help it and it just is what it is. But Absolutely. That's a totally different thing. It's not for like retakes specifically, right? So like bouncing off of that, if I were to give you my best tips on how to do different retakes, and it's easier, I think, I don't know if it's easier, but you can control more things when you're doing solo episodes because you can start and stop whenever you want to, right? So like I mentioned, I like to talk with my hands a lot. And when I first recorded this podcast, I'll never forget, I think I did one episode and my hands were wild. Like, do you remember this episode? They were like,
yes.
Woo!
Yes, I do. Because I remember sending you a message being like, girl, what? It was like Talladega Nights where Ricky Bobby is being interviewed and his hands just slowly rise up every time. Like literally, she just had her hands up, kind of palms towards her face. Just the whole time.
Ridiculous.
Like they weren't even moving. She wasn't even using them to talk. They were just there for the whole episode.
I'm pretty sure you asked me if I wanted to like retake the episode. I was like, no.
I was like, this is wild behavior. Would you like to change it? And she is like, no. And I said, okay, great. I gave you the option. Perfect.
You're like, as your editor, I highly recommend that you
as your editor, you look wild.
So funny. Oh my God. So since that point, I tried to think about a couple of different ways that I can keep the consistency while also not losing momentum. Because like you said, when you're talking and you're really excited about something, you have excitement in your voice, your eyes light up in a certain way, your voice sounds different, right? So even in this moment right now, if Emily and I were to go back and try and retake that whole section that we just talked about, like you would never be able to get it the exact same, like the energy wouldn't be the same, right? So one thing that I started doing was anytime that I needed to pause or, look down at, because I like to, when I record my solo episodes, I like to have different bullet points, not a script, but I like to have different bullet points so I can reference things back. And so I will pause and keep my eyes, keep my hands, keep everything in the exact same spot. And then I just move my eyes down to the screen and then I'll look back up to the camera. And it makes such a seamless edit because nothing else has moved. So when you go to do the edit, all you have to do is just splice it and you can pull it back together, right? There's no moving back and forth. There's no like waving your hands in the air. Like you just don't care. Like you're literally just, I don't know, like sharing the content in the exact same way without moving your whole body around. So I don't know. I think that's like my biggest tip. And that's probably my only tip when it comes to doing re-records. Cause like it doesn't have to be that serious. You know what I mean? Like I think there's so much like seriousness that comes into the world of podcasting where it's like, you can make it easy for yourself. I don't know. What do you think?
Thinking about that continuity of where you're at and that kind of thing is really helpful. And as you said, I 100% agree. Like, it is much easier to do with solo episodes. So I think solo episodes are the perfect place to practice this. Know
Yeah.
that your guest episodes, they might be a little bit more, I don't want to
Fluid.
say like carefree. That's not the word I'm looking for, but they could be a little bit more conversational and things like that, where there's going to
Yeah.
be changes in how you talk and stuff like that. And that's totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally fine.
We've had clients though too, like we worked with in the past, where they would try and like re-record like a whole question all the way over again or a whole answer all the way over again. And like that stuff is fine because like sometimes the guests will want to go and like re-record it and retake it. And it's fine, but you're resetting up the question. You know what I mean? I don't know what your thoughts are. Like if you make a recommendation, mine would be if you need to pick back up a question, you pick up that question. And when you're editing it, you use the original one because I feel like that energy flows a little bit better than a hard stop and reset. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts? And in addition to whatever other point you were going to say too, because I totally cut you off. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. I think what you're saying is right. The only thing I will say is that if you feel like if you have a guest on for a specific topic or you're trying to talk about a certain thing and especially if you've had a pre-call, you've discussed it beforehand, you're like, this is the direction we're going. If they go off on some wild tangent that is not what you're looking for and does not answer the question, I do think that it's okay to sit there and say, hey, even stop them and be like, hey, hold on 1 second. Sorry, I think you misunderstood my intention of this question. This is what I'm looking for
Mm-hmm.
us to talk about. Can I re-ask you? And then you go from that angle.
I
Because
like that.
a lot of people are also really excited when they're a podcast guest. They're talking about something that they're an expert on or that they're passionate about or all of the above. And so it's natural for people to maybe go veer off on a direction. So I would say that in that case, there is a certain sense of control that you as a podcast host should and can exert where you're like, hey, hold
Mm-hmm.
up. Because ultimately, this is going out to your audience too, and you want to make sure that your audience is getting what you were trying to get from this person, right? So setting
Mm-hmm.
really clear expectations and then following through with stopping people and being like, hey, let's actually cut this and we're going to go ahead and restart this question. Let's go from here. I think that's my only caveat
Like addition.
to the retaking a question is like, honestly, it's like if it's not actually covering the thing that you want it to cover, you
Exactly.
know?
Because then now you end up with an episode that you're like, what are we even talking about? Right. And I think that's a whole
Yeah.
piece.
Or the other option is like, honestly, if you have something like that and someone goes off on a whole other tangent, you can also think to yourself, like, hey, I'm going to basically ask this again, except for know that you need to rephrase it. And then just tell your editor, be like, hey, I asked this and their response was wild. So we can just cut that. And I'll be like,
Exactly.
awesome, great. And then I'll do it.
Exactly. I love that you're just like, I will do it.
I will. No, absolutely. You go
Nobody
ahead and
else.
tell me that there's a wild section where they went off on something that you were like, I was not expecting that. I did not know what to do. It took me by surprise. I got you.
That's great. I think that these are great tips. Like, I mean, I'm just sitting here. I'm like, we can talk about retakes just for this song. This is the thing. Emily and I can talk about all of these different things for so long. Let's talk about very quickly, because this one is an easier one to talk about, microphones and headphones. This is a basic one, but like, I think people forget.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing for me is that for headphones, you can use your AirPods, right? Simona uses her AirPods for her headphones. I don't. I use the same ones I use for my editing because I'm not on enough podcast episodes to make another purchase of headphones. Like, it just doesn't make sense. I did make a purchase of a better microphone so that I didn't sound as
We love
terrible.
that for you.
Thank
We love that
you.
for you.
Thank you.
Which microphone do you have?
I have a Shure mic. I would have to look up the
Yeah.
number.
Yeah.
But yeah, it comes with
They're
like a
really
little
good.
stand and it's just so
It's
nice.
so cute. I love it.
You love that for me. But you do
I
need to
do.
have
I really do.
headphones in because it can cause a echo. And I think that this
Mm-hmm.
is something really important to also put in your pre-show email or follow-up to your guests. asking them to have headphones in. And then also
At the bare minimum, because not everyone's going to have a microphone, right? Not everyone invests in that, but at the bare minimum, have headphones, because depending on what we've seen some wild things, right? But like, depending on the room that you're in, even if you're in a room with all hard surfaces and you have no mic and no headphones, the sound is just reverbing off of every single wall. It's bouncing around and all the things. Like, you need something to be able to control the sound and where it's like where it's bouncing to and where it's coming from. So like at the bare minimum, put headphones on.
And as you said, guests may not have microphones, but what I want you to look for is if they are wearing wired headphones and using those as a microphone as well, they need to be really conscientious of anything that the microphone is going to be rubbing against. Women frequently forget about this with their hair, like they get caught in their hair or on a scarf, or if they have a necklace, it can bounce against all those things and it creates these little like thuds. And
scratchiness.
And thuds and scratchiness is like the best case scenario because it can get much worse than that. Just to think about it as a, like, even if you're talking to them and you start talking, you're like, hey, listen, I noticed that you're wearing like this like really big scarf and your microphone's on it. Can you either hold the microphone away, and they can just hold it? Like, is it going to be the most comfortable thing? Probably not. But your editor will thank you, or whoever has to listen to it will thank you. Your audience will thank you because you're just taking care of like that extra step. I don't want you to think that you have to micromanage your guests, but at the same time, if they are guesting on your platform, you can request things. And some of those can be really reasonable things like, whatever mic you have, let's just talk for a couple minutes so that we can see where there might be an issue. Or if you notice that they're clicking a pin, things like that, just like really basic things like that. But as far as microphones go, I think that it's the being aware if it's a wired microphone on somebody or like one of those little face microphones. Those usually are okay. They may not have the best quality, but at least most of the time, you're not going to get a lot of the scratchiness. It's just if they keep touching it. And I know that I bump my mic because I also talk with my hands, and I'm trying to be better about like looking at the camera versus like looking down when I talk.
Yeah.
And so
there's a lot going on.
Yeah,
like
things like that are gonna
And I
happen.
do it too. Like, I hit the table and I think I did a podcast a couple episodes ago, and afterwards you were like, you need to like be mindful of your hands. You're literally waving them around everywhere, that it's like hitting the desk and making noise. And I was like,
You
oh my God, I
tap
didn't
the
even
desk.
realize. Yeah,
You go like
it
this
happens
on the
though.
desk, and you'll like make a point and be like, bump, bump, and I'm like, stop it.
And you're like, we don't need sound effects. Thank you. I can add the sound effects in afterwards.
Would you like an added sound effect there?
That was the perfect one. That felt very on brand for us. But microphones and headphones overall, I think that, and without going into like all of the different types of tech, because I do have an episode all about that you can go back to. I think it's like maybe like 5 episodes ago where you can break down all the different recommendations. But when it comes to your actual mic and your actual headphones, like just making sure you're being mindful that you at least the bare minimum are using headphones, especially when you're doing a guest interview. You don't necessarily need it when you're doing a solo episode, because if it's just you and it's just your sound, your audio, it's typically fine. But for guests, I always recommend it. Any final thoughts on that before we go into lighting and clothing?
I think we're good.
Okay, this one is a good one. And I know there's one specific point you want to make about this one. Especially when it comes to clothing. But with lighting, like lighting in and of itself is an art. People literally go to school to learn lighting, especially photographers, people who are in cinematography, people who are doing high value production, all that kind of stuff. But what I would say is making sure that you have something that's brightening you up enough. Like where I'm recording right now, my lighting is not perfect. This is a temporary studio this is like a temporary location that I'm sitting in though. So I haven't really retrofitted the whole thing to the exact way that I would want it. But even like, just depending on different recording spots that I choose, I always try and make sure that if I'm in a spot with natural lighting, that I'm facing the light. Like I'm either looking at the window with the light coming in, or if I have to be somewhere with the light behind me, you got to make sure that the window or the door or whatever it is far enough behind, but that you're balancing it with another light in front of you. This is something that we talked about because I record in all kinds of different places, but I always want to make sure that the lighting is balanced and that things look clear. So maybe it's not 100% the way that I would want it to look. Like even right now, I look and there's like dark spots, there's shadows and this and that. It's not perfect, but it's enough lighting for you. If you're watching this on YouTube versus listening to it on audio, it's enough for you to be able to see and see clearly.
As far as lighting goes, again, it's not going to always be perfect. I could not find my other light this morning, so I just have my overhead light, and it's what it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
But I will also say that it's kind of like my podcast Santa last year where I talked about getting a better mic if I was a podcaster.
Look at you accomplishing that goal.
I know, right? But I couldn't find my light this morning because I don't use it all the time. And
Yeah.
so it's one of those things that if it's something that you're going to be frequently using, then I think, you can probably figure out a way to set it up. But I think the natural light thing is also really important to touch on with the whole, like, just understand that if you're sitting somewhere near a window and you're using that for your light, if it suddenly becomes overcast or something like that, it's going to drastically change how you look potentially. So it is
100%.
always nice to have something to balance that. And exactly what you said, if you have something behind you, do not sit directly in front of a window, because what happens is if we try to balance out the light, you're going to blow out the light behind you before we ever can get you to look brighter. And so you
100%.
kind of get
Well, because you
stuck.
can't add brightness to that, right? Because you got to think about like, so we've had clients in the past just be like, well, can you just make me look brighter? And it's like, yes. And when you accentuate light or brightness in any recording or a photo or whatever it is, you're pulling even more light on the lightest parts, right? So unless you're specifically isolating you as a person, it's harder to make yourself look brighter without making the whole backdrop look brighter.
Yeah.
And then if you on top of that if you go into like the clothing side, I won't steal your thunder with the clothing, but I even think about like my own self, like I have blonde hair. My hair can easily blend in with the light, right? Because there's no contrast. There's nothing contrasting it. So there's that to be mindful of as well. And do you want to talk about clothing?
Yeah. My biggest thing with clothing is it's so much better if you can make yourself pop against a background. So if I have like a white wall or a gray wall behind me, I don't want to then dress in white or gray. Like, don't do it. Especially if it's a white
Don't
wall.
do it.
Don't also have a white shirt on and everything like that. Like it doesn't look good. You tend to you can end up looking really like sickly kind of, depending on the lighting and everything. You're not going to look like your best self. You aren't.
Mm-mm.
So having something with contrast, it doesn't have to be something outrageous or anything like that. Patterns, whatever. I'm fine with patterns. Like if you want to wear a funky pattern, wear a funky pattern. Like wear your favorite color. It's all good. Unless it's white, in which case find something else. Or
Unless your wall is a dark wall.
record against a different color wall. Exactly. If you had like a dark blue wall and you wanted to record in a white shirt, go for it. That when you're recording,
the other thing,
like looking for that contrast really is nice because it also helps with the lighting too. It helps balance you out, and it helps you make you look better.
Exactly. And if I were to give one final tip on lighting just overall, I think about this often because I record my podcast from hotel rooms. I have a studio in, Michigan that I record from. I have a studio in Toronto that I record from, aka my house. And then I'm in the process of moving, where my office location is going to be. Again, like this is all temporary. And the location I'm going to move it to has a window literally right beside on my right side, right? And I already know that this is going to be a thing. I already know that this is going to happen. And so in my mind, I'm like, how can I control the lighting right off the bat and make sure that it's not going to blow out whatever it is that I'm recording? Wherever your light source comes from, you want to balance with light on the opposite side. And it doesn't mean that you need a light just as strong, but for example, if the light is coming in naturally on my right side, I'm going to want to put some kind of lighting on my left side to also brighten that side up so that you can find a little bit more balance. And then, if you can, record when, it's a little bit more or overcast if you're in front of a window, or even when it's like darker out, because then you can kind of control the lighting a little bit more when you take a natural light source away. But natural light is so beautiful still for recording. So anyways, there's just like little nuances, like little things, little tips, like little tricks that I've picked up over the years when it comes to, overall when it comes to overall recording and your light source.
Also, I just want to say with clothing, if you're recording multiple episodes in a day, you don't have to change your outfit for every single episode. You can wear the same thing in 2 episodes.
Just
That's
alternate them
okay.
even.
or alternate them, or just throw on like a sweater over something. Like it doesn't have to be a huge outfit change. If you're trying to do batch recording, make it as simple as possible for yourself. You don't need to have 8 different wardrobes.
100%. I feel like I like to do this off. Like when I batch record my content, I will pick one like base colored shirt, like a white or a black tank top or whatever. And then I'll alternate different sweaters on top of it. Like I'll do, this shirt pair with this sweater. Like if you have 3 or 4 different sweater options, it looks like a totally new outfit. And then sometimes I'll just put my hair in a clip or something like that. Like just to try and make it look a little bit different. Emily, the second last one that we wanted to touch on, we don't have to spend too much time on this one, but I think it's an important one as we're going into the new year because everyone wants to monetize their podcast, right? People want to make money off their show. And whether you get a brand partnership and you're doing ad reads that way, or you are doing something like a affiliate link or a course link or, a product, like whatever the thing is, let's talk a little bit about ad reads and maybe some of the things that we see in maybe for 2026 that would be a little bit more powerful. I'm thinking on the storytelling side.
Yeah, I think storytelling is really where it's at. If you have the ability to have more free range with your ads, like if it is a personal ad, like for your business, then for me, I think that you can weave that into your episode a couple different places and not have it as a structured ad where it's like everything stops. Here is my ad. Everything starts back up. Because first of all, those are really easy to skip through. Like so easy to skip through, right? You can just say, yeah, we're going to skip 30 seconds. And usually if you go by 30 or 15 seconds, you're going to get through it and you're not going to miss much of the episode, right? You're going to be able to like catch up. If we were just to like naturally fit things in, like you do, if people listen to your episodes and they hear you talk about your membership and stuff like that, there's a link below, whatever, we're doing like a promo, anything like that, like I just did really poorly. They're just so much easier to hear. And it's so much easier for me to be like, oh yeah, we're talking about this certain subject. I have something that can help you with that. If you need it, this is how you get it. And then you move on. And I think it also keeps it interesting because you may phrase it differently, different times, and you're connecting it to different thoughts. Whereas an ad read where you're like, it's the same thing every single time, it may not hit people where it needs to. So like the way that you phrase it in that recorded one may not hit people. But when you are able to have it fluctuate a little bit, you never know what that phrase or that tone or that context is that's going to make it really connect with a person to say, that is what I need. I didn't think that's what I needed, 100%. But when they said it like that, oh, it has that aspect to it. Yes, I do want to try that out.
100%. I think that this is really important too, because if you think about why people buy things because they feel a connection to the person who's recommending it, or it's something that they actually need, right? And so if you have the combo of this is something that someone actually needs and a person that I really like, admire, and respect is recommending that product, then I am going to most likely buy the thing because you have more of like, I don't know, that kind of influence, if you will, in that way. I think about my membership all the time when it comes to stuff like this. I've done different types of, forms of advertising for the membership, and I've had people join the membership from different types of ads that I've done with it. And so a lot of times when I'm doing strategy work with different clients, people will ask me like, well, what's the best way to do ads? And I'm like, all of the ways. Like you kind of have to test all of the different ways, whether you're telling an actual story of a member in your membership, right? For example, I have someone who joined the membership maybe like a couple months ago now, and he found a podcast episode that we did from a look inside the membership like a year ago. And he liked the energy, liked the vibe, and he was like, you know what? Yeah, I want to be in on this membership as well. And so it was like a low bar way for him to see what happens inside the membership, right? And be like, yeah, you know what? This sounds fun for me. Like, I think I would want to do this. So there's that. That's like the first thing. The second thing too that I think about is if you're just talking about something and you're just being like natural about it and you're just literally sharing what you love about it, people form that connection to it. People get, more intrigued by what you're talking about versus, like you said, having a hard stop because it makes it feel disconnected. And so anyways, I feel like ad reads have evolved so much over the last few years, especially. So in some ways, there really isn't like a 100% right way and a 100% wrong way because different podcasts will have different things that work for them. But in our agency, everything we do kind of revolves around the storytelling piece because at the end of the day, you're trying to cut through the noise, and you cut through the noise by sharing stories that people can relate to.
I think my last thing about it is also that be aware if you are getting an ad from a larger company that you are fulfilling what you need to fulfill in that ad. So, for sure, make sure that you see, do I have any lateral give to make this my own? Or are they saying you have to say it word for word how we want you to say it? And if that's the case, really read over it a few times and see how you can add some warmth into it. Because a lot of those ad reads are not the most compelling. Like, let's be real. And also, just because you hear it on another podcast, how they do it, that doesn't mean that you have the capability to do it. So, like, for instance, I always talk about the McElroy brothers and their really funny ads, right? Like, they're so unhinged. They're so ridiculous. They have been doing this for like over 15 years, I think. They have relationships with these companies that a newer podcaster would not have. And so a newer podcaster, you may need to put in the time doing regular ad reads because you're not at the point where they like trust you to give that lateral movement.
It's true.
So just be aware
really
that
true.
Like, it's not just because so-and-so did this, I can do this. Just because that's how they do ad reads on Armchair Expert, I can do this. That's vastly different. Or I think there's one of
100%.
There's another one, and I can't remember the name of it, of course, but it's like 3 actors. That company is going to let them do whatever. Yes, they're going to let them do whatever they want to.
100%. Because they also know the boundary, though. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, they're actors and like they know.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's like about balancing like the company's expectations with your personality and like who you are, But then there's also too this whole other piece about, and we don't have to dive into this because we don't have enough time to dive into this today, but
we can literally talk about all of this forever.
I know, I'm like, we're literally gonna be here for like 4 hours. But the dynamic ads, okay, so these are different types of ads. So these are pre-recorded ads that get slotted into your podcast. And they're also geographical and they're based on interest, right? So it's kind of like, it's like ad targeting, if you will. So Emily and I could listen to the same podcast episode and we'll get totally different ads in that one podcast episode.
We have.
This actually happened to us one. Yeah.
We have.
Yeah.
Because I told her, I was listening to a podcast and I said, oh my God, they went live with an ad that wasn't finished. Like it hadn't been edited. They were retakes. There was like throat clearing. There was all sorts of things. And I was like, this has not been edited. And it went live as an ad. And I told her a timestamp and everything. She went and listened to it and she goes, no ad. It's not there. I was like,
what are you talking about?
I was like, now I just feel crazy.
But that's the other thing too, though, is if you have dynamic ads that are being inserted, those are different types of ads, right? So again, you have to look at like, what are the type of ads that you are putting into your podcast episode? Because there are space for both. Like you have space for those host read ads that are baked into your episodes, right? And that can be with specific brand partnerships. And also you can have the dynamic ads. But, sometimes people will put like 4 or 5 different ads back to back to back. I honestly would be so curious to know what the completion rate is on that, because I can't imagine that's a very effective way, because you can skip it. Now there's platforms and like providers that will allow you to not skip it, right? They're like different types of companies.
I actually recently unsubscribed from a podcast because of their ads.
Why?
because they had so many ad breaks, and I just felt like their ad reads felt so disingenuous, and I was like, "Yep, no, I'm good." And so I've unsubscribed
I'm
from a
over
podcast
this.
that I had been subscribed to for a few years, and
Wow.
I listened to pretty regularly. Like, they had a weekly episode. There would be a few weeks that I would miss, and I would skip purposefully when I, like, read what it was gonna be about,
Yep.
but years of listening to them, and then I was just like, "I am so sick of this." And
And you're like, it's not worth it.
I didn't think I was getting value out of the rest of
Mm-hmm.
the podcast enough to
Mm-hmm.
balance out that frustration.
100%. But then you have things like Patreon where people will put the whole, ad-free episode behind a paywall, which is great. But if the content isn't matching and isn't like living up to what the person is expecting or wanting,
Yep.
there you have a challenge as well.
Yep.
That's so interesting. The last one that we wanted to talk about today, and this is actually the one that we're going to break out into more of like a workshop, and we're going to do more content about this. You had a really great idea of doing different videos. I don't want to even share the idea because I don't want someone to steal it because it was such a good idea. So we're going to leave it a secret, but we have stuff coming up in the membership for this specifically. And we have a lot of content on social media coming up around this too, because one of the things that's happening right now is you have all these different AI softwares, these editing softwares and all that, and they're great and they're amazing. And also they don't replace traditional editing. So, I've seen a lot of stuff, especially on threads, or people will say like, oh, but I can just do it on AI. It's not the same. Like having AI edit your podcast for you is not the same as having someone who actually knows what they're doing go in and edit it.
Well, and also AI is not like, there's one of the things is they're not going to give you the feedback that we give you.
Yeah.
Like I
That's one of our
frequently,
keys though, is
yeah,
that we are strategy first. And that's a big, big difference between us as an agency versus a VA versus a podcast manager versus like a whatever, or, an AI software. You're right. You're not going to get the same strategy, right?
yeah. And I'm going to say like Simona is so good with strategy stuff. And I come at it more from I've now listened to and edited probably like, hundreds of some of these people's podcasts. And so when something comes up that sounds like way off base that a guest said, or something, the way they phrased something came off really weirdly. And I was like, hey, I don't think that this is how you meant it to come across, but I want you to know that it could. And if that worries you, then like let me know how you would like me to fix that. I can take it out. I can do this.
100%.
I can do that. You're not going to, AI is not going to watch out for you. AI is not going to think about what your audience knows about you and say, well,
Mm-hmm.
this is a wild take from you that's completely different than what everything you've ever said. And those are the things that can like hurt the listener relationship. And so, I think that that's one of the biggest things about AI that you're not going to get if you just use it for editing and finding clips and everything like that. Like it's not thinking about your
100%.
audience. It's not thinking about your brand and that kind of thing, which is what we are thinking about.
Exactly. And we use AI within the agency to like some capacity, but I don't rely on it as, I'll give an example. Like we use AI to remove all of the ums and the uhs from a podcast episode. But then when we're going back through it, we're going back in and sometimes we add them back. Like when I'm editing stuff, sometimes I'm like, you know what, this sounds way better with having an in front of it, because otherwise it's going to sound too choppy and cut off, right? So there's also those types of things too that are really important, but not just that too. You also have like the way things get like spliced, two screens, one main screen, adding in images. Like there's a lot of different components, and yes, like the tools make it easier, but you still have to put the time in at the end of the day. You know what I mean? And then if you're not an editor, it's going to take you so much more time. And because at the end of the day, all the stuff that we do, the point of it is to, share the message that you want to share with your audience, of course, but you create a podcast episode, you want to focus on like a completion rate, right? It's a really, really, really important metric is your completion rate. How far down are people making it to the episodes? Are they finishing the whole episode? We want them to finish the whole episode. If you don't know how to edit and how to keep the story going without it sounding so long and so drawn out, and you don't know how to chop it up in that way, you're going to probably lose people,
Absolutely. AI is not perfect. So like Descript sometimes does not catch ums and uhs. And they also sometimes
Yeah.
will say, like, if I were to say something and I would say a podcast episode, but I mean it as like a
A
podcast
podcast. Yeah.
episode, they'll think that's an like a filler and cut it. And then it makes no
Yep.
sense, you know? So
Yep.
you have to think about
And
it
you're
that
like,
way
huh?
too. And I even have tried the multicam option where it's like show the speaker with cutaways, stuff like that. The problem is that if you have someone who is talking and it doesn't pick up that it's the next person talking, it could be sitting here showing you Simona and I'm talking, and Simona could be taking a note, drinking her drink, doing whatever,
Yeah.
because she's like, oh, I don't think the camera will be on me. I can take a second to take a sip, scratch my face,
Do
whatever.
whatever. Yeah.
And then it just shows them. And if you're not rewatching it, you won't catch it.
Exactly.
So
100%.
I'm really
100%.
excited
But
about this thing that we're going to do. I'm really excited about it.
me too. I was just about to say we're going to dive so much deeper into this in the new year and talk way more about this. I think it's an important topic. Like, I think that, the art of anything is to embrace the current situation and like what is happening, because there's also the piece of like, if you don't embrace any of it at all, you really do get left behind. And there's ways to use these different tools for good and to help and to save time. There's also ways to use them that really don't give you the best product and take, a lot of creativity away, even though they're meant to add creativity in. The problem is when you don't use your own brain for creativity, everything starts to look the same. Everything is generic. Everything is the same, right? So anyway, so we're going to dive more into that. But I'm curious, Emily, if our listener today has any thoughts, comments, questions, any of that, put it in the comments below. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on audio, send us a message. Like, we love hearing from you. We are always here and love hearing from you.
Always.
So yeah, do you have any final thoughts? Always here. Any final thoughts before we hop off today, Emily?
If you're in our membership and you're watching this, like message us in the Discord, like reach out, tag us, like say, hey, you had a really good point about this. I have a question about what I was doing. And I don't want people to ever feel like they've been singled out. So I want you to know that like we are talking in broad swaths here. So please do not feel like we're calling someone out like weirdly.
No.
That's not what it is.
And this is based off of like thousands of podcast episodes edited at this point. But I will also say too, if you are feeling a little called out, maybe there's an opportunity for improvement. So reach out to us, let us know if you have questions. I love to give people different advice about this kind of stuff. I love to have conversations. So, even like if you want like 30 minutes, like the link, to book 30 minutes is in the episode notes below. So feel free to do that as well. But Emily, thank you so much for being here with me today. I always have so much fun when we do our podcast episodes together. And I think this is a really good one.
Yeah. I mean, always.
Always. Amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you to our listener today. If you have any questions, please reach out. And otherwise, we will see you same time, same place next week.